So it was a normal Tuesday for me. I lived in Brooklyn at the time, and I drove into work, and I took the BQE. And as I got off the BQE, going to the Brooklyn Bridge, I was on the Brooklyn Bridge, and I noticed something very strange. There was sirens behind me, not that unusual, but I looked up and I saw black smoke, and when I looked to the slightly to the left, I saw black smoke coming out of the North Tower of the World Trade Center. And it seemed odd, but I thought, there's always a chance for a fire in the towers. And I continued on the Brooklyn Bridge. And when I got off of the Brooklyn Bridge by Park Row South, it's a hairpin turn right in front of City Hall. That began an unbelievable and unforgettable day for me, because in front of me, the first plane had just exploded inside the building, and I was a block away. There were thousands of people looking up at the building in amazement, as I was too. And I thought to myself, how am I going to get to the office? I was just concerned with getting to work. So working in the area for 25 years at that time, I knew all the back roads, and I made a turn on Spruce Street and then Gold and then to Fulton Street. And as I'm on Fulton Street, people are running towards me screaming, terrorist attack, terrorist attack. And I was dumbfounded. I'm like, am I really hearing this? And then I heard this loud noise, and I looked up and I saw the second plane hit the building from a block away. And at that time, it just seemed surreal. I said, what did I just see? And again, the only thing on my mind was getting to work. And so I made some wrong turns on streets and put my car in the garage. And that began the real adventure of 9/11 for me. I walked to Park Row, which was a block away from the towers, and there were thousands and thousands of people standing in the street, and I joined them. I was standing in the center aisle on the island, and looking up in amazement. It was like a scene out of a movie, an Owen Allen movie, which he always did, thriller movies. And in looking up, I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. I referred to them as birds, but it was really people jumping out of the building. And I was thinking to myself, what would compel somebody to jump out of a building from 80 stories up, 90 stories up? And I was just in, I guess, momentary shock. There's one image that's forever etched in my mind, is three people holding hands as they went out. And it was just horrible. And I continued to watch, and we were all there, and I started to cry. I got very, very emotional. And at some point, because things were happening so quickly, I saw the South Tower start to fall right in front of me. And very quickly thinking, I ran into one of the J&R stores that was still open, along with hundreds of people. And we were all there, and knowing the store, I went behind the counter and I took a t-shirt and I ripped it, and I just put it in front of my face, just my nose, to try and shield some of the smell, some of the dust, which it really didn't do a good job with. And at that point, I looked outside, and there was a black cloud that went on Park Row, and it was pitch black. It was midnight outside, and everybody was trying to escape. But there was a consensus that we should stay inside because that was probably a safe place to be. Didn't know what was going on outside. So once things calmed down and you could start to see outside, we all went out. And some of the J&R stores were still open, and the main store was starting to close. And another image, again, etched in my mind. I saw a woman who had a kind of a layered haircut. And what happened is that the dust had formed on her hair and created stacks of dust on her hair. It was unbelievable. Just the way that she looked. It was just hard to fathom. So the store closed, and I went out onto Park Row, and it was amazing. There was probably 7 inches of several inches of dust on the ground of the remnants of the building. And there were books and there were papers, and unfortunately I saw shoes, and I found somebody's cell phone, and I just put it in my pocket. And I just continued thinking about how I'm going to get home. My car was in the garage. There was very little chance of getting it out. And walking on Park Row, and I ran into another manager who said, come with me. And we went to the computer store, which is on the corner of VZ and Park Row, which is, we were directly in front of St. Paul's Chapel. And we could see what was going on. The fire department had broken the front door. And when we questioned them, they said they were opening up all the buildings to be used as a triage center. And we went in, we looked at each other. What are we going to do? The second building came down right in front of us. And it was really, really, really traumatizing. But again, we just stayed there. The other gentleman had been working for the company for several decades as well. We knew each other very, very well, and there was a loyalty to the company, and just to see what we could do to help. And we stayed there, and there was people coming in and out, because it was kind of a refuge from the outside. It was as if a nuclear bomb had gone off. That's the only way I can describe it. Never experiencing one, obviously, but it was just, there were things that were just constantly flying in the air all over the place. And as the day progressed, we lost track of time. And as the day progressed, there was a lieutenant from the fire department who came in, who informed us that 7 World Trade Center, which was on VZ Street, right off of Church, right up the block from us, we could see it. The building was on fire. And that was the headquarters for the Office of Emergency Management, OEM. And he informed us that there was 5,000 gallons of fuel in the basement, and they didn't know what was going to happen, if the fuel was going to come down the block, and we might want to consider evacuating. We did not evacuate. We stayed. And I saw a 45-story building literally collapse right in front of me. When that happened, there was a rush of people that came into the store. And when that subsided, the other manager who was with me made the decision that he was going to leave and go home. He lived uptown in the 70s, and he walked home. And I was left there by myself. What am I going to do? And I made the decision that I was going to stay, to do what I could, not only to help people and to see what was going on with the store, and to see if anybody would come in and help. And I ended up staying there through the night. And through the night, I was feeding first responders, firemen, policemen. The Army had dropped off, I think they call them k-rations, where you could rip the top off and put it on the bottom. It would heat up the food. And at one point, I was spoon feeding a fireman who was his face was like ashen gray, and he had come from ground zero, and he looked like he was in shock. And I was spoon feeding him mac and cheese, which was part of the k-ration. There were other people coming in. Is there a bathroom? So I knew where the bathroom was. I left it wide open so that people could use it. Um, they had set up an eye triage center where they had saline solution and they had gauze pads, and that was right in front of the store. And there was just lines of policemen and firemen who were waiting to have their eyes flushed out because, you know, all the toxins that were in the air, they were very corrosive. And I unfortunately was subjected to it as well, and I could just barely keep my eyes open. I did get a bottle of saline and I was flushing my eyes, but to no avail. It was still very, very painful for me. And through the night, people were coming in and out, and they had set up a temporary command station at the corner of Broadway and Vesey Street, where they had some medics and they had some communications, and the construction trucks that were coming in. There were fire engines coming from all over the tri-state area. An EMS worker came into the store, and he had a uniform on that I didn't recognize. And I said, "Where are you from?" He said, "I'm from Maryland." He had driven up from Maryland to help. So everybody was there, whoever could get there. There people came down from Indian Point, which is all the way upstate, which is, I don't know how many hour drive it is, but it's a pretty far. And they were there as well. And it was, you know, we were there for one purpose: to help one another, to get through this unbelievable tragedy. It was just mind blowing. And one thing that I'll never forget was the generosity of a sanitation worker who was driving a fueler. And what that was one of those giant tanker trucks that was filled with fuel, and his job was to constantly go down to ground zero and fill up the fire trucks with gas, because they had to continually run to pump. The pumpers had to run to pump the water. And what he did is that he went next door, and this was probably close to 12 o'clock at night, and he was able to get me a sandwich, which was the first time I had eaten all day. So that was at 11 o'clock. I was able to get a bottle of water and a sandwich. And through the night, it was a scene of just continual trucks, continual men, just doing what they can. And then came sunrise. Now, having worked in the downtown area for probably close to 30 years at that time, what was amazing to me was when the sun came up, there were parts of the downtown area that were exposed to sunlight for the first time since the towers went up. Because when the towers went up, they were blocking sun from hitting certain parts of the streets, certain parts of the building. So now there were shadows that I had never witnessed before, that I had never seen before. And that I kind of like took that in. That was almost like a sign from above. You know, I tried to find something positive in such a horrific day. And that sunrise on Wednesday morning was just unbelievable. And what was also, you know, an amazing sight is that New York City had started to clean up. There were street sweepers that were going on Broadway, that were going in front of City Hall, just trying to clean up some of the dust that was still circulating in the air. And as the day progressed, a gentleman from the from J&R came in, as I affectionately called him, MacGyver, because he could do anything. And he and I helped secure the store. And there was another shop owner on the block who came down to take a look at his store, and I knew him pretty well. He happened to live in Brooklyn, as did I, and he drove me home. So I got home on Wednesday afternoon at 4 o'clock. And up until then, I had never looked in the mirror, and I didn't, I was living it, so I could never fully comprehend exactly what took place. But when I turned on the TV and it was all over the TV, I was just like, I just broke down. And probably about an hour later, I composed myself and I took 4 consecutive showers to get all the grime off. I threw out my clothes. The one thing that I saved were my shoes. I actually wrapped them in saran wrap and I kept them in my apartment until I moved. It was just something, it was just a constant memory for me. They were behind the door, they were wrapped in saran wrap, and when I moved, I threw them out. And that was some degree of closure for me. And I didn't have any reception on my cell phone. At that time, yes, I did have a cell phone. I had one of the big, bulky flip phones that weighed probably about 3 pounds. And I listened to all of the messages that were on the phone, and it was the mailbox was full, and my mom was crying, my brother was crying, my sister was crying. There were so many friends. Where are you? Where are you? Are you okay? Are you okay? Because everybody knew that I had worked downtown, working for J&R for such a long time. And I slowly started to return calls to my family. And I told friends to call other friends because I just couldn't talk to people, to let them know that I was okay. And I stayed home until the following Monday, when I went back to work at J&R, which was now everybody was relocated to our distribution center. And I went there and people were hugging me, and it was just an unbelievable scene, to know that people had gotten out, that people had survived. And there were a couple of people who were injured, but it wasn't anything that was that severe, some cuts, some bruises. But, the mental toll and that it took on all of us was just something that, lives on and lives with me to this day.
So, Marty, that whole time you couldn't reach out to anyone in your family or any of your friends to let a single person know you were okay?
I was totally incognito. I had no means of communication to reach anybody. All the firemen and the first responders were just they were communicating via walkie-talkie. They had set up a bank of walkie-talkies because there was no cell service. There was very limited electricity in the area as well.
So you were down there for a day and a half,
Roughly
basically.
30 hours.
Okay. But just being down there for the 30 hours left you with 9/11 illnesses.
Correct. 14 years later is when I developed an illness. And it's something that I live with every day. I spent many months in the hospital, went through many different procedures, and I continue to fight on a daily basis. It's become my mission to give back. I've been given a new life because of this illness.
Do you feel comfortable telling us what that illness is?
The illness is multiple myeloma, which is cancer of the blood cells. So I've gone through 2 stem cell transplants. I've been paralyzed by it because it cracked my spine. So I was in a wheelchair for 2 months. I had to learn how to walk again. And so I went from a wheelchair to a walker to crutches to a cane to today, where I have permanent damage to my feet and to my back because of it.
So 14 years later, you develop a blood cancer. Did you connect that cancer to 9/11?
Immediately, immediately. I happen to be a twin. I have a twin sister, and there's no cancer in our family per se. You know, in our immediate family, in distant relatives there are, and nobody had blood cancer, and my sister is perfectly fine. And right away, as a matter of fact, the doctors were able to connect it immediately.
Well,
I had
you were
also been, excuse me, I had also been a member of the World Trade Center Health Registry since its inception. And that I knew right away. I actually contacted them when I was in the hospital and told them about it.
For those who are watching or listening and not aware, 68 cancers have been scientifically linked to the 9/11 dust. And yet, people who have had these cancers over the years don't necessarily connect the dots to their own cancer. So, we're trying to get the word out that if you were there on 9/11 or spent any time below Canal Street in the 8 months after, and you have a cancer recent, or you have had a cancer over the last 19 plus years, you need to register with the World Trade Center Health Program. You get free lifetime health care, and you're likely entitled to an award from the Victim Compensation Fund. Only a fraction of those potentially impacted are actually part of these programs because they just don't connect the dots, or they're not aware of the programs. So I thank you, Marty, for sharing that. And I'm so sorry for all of this because 9/11 didn't end on 9/11.
So true.
Is there anything else you wanted to add?
Yes, I have actually worked with numerous people who have gotten sick through my company and helping them to navigate the system. And something else is that I'm an ambassador for the American Leukemia Foundation, which covers all blood cancers, and I work with people who have multiple myeloma, letting them know that even though you have a diagnosis, you can lead somewhat of a fulfilling life. And I'm giving back, and it's so rewarding to be able to do that because I'm here to give back and to fight and never give up, and most importantly, never forget. And I support the Stephen Stiller Foundation and anybody that's affiliated with the 9/11 cause, because we can never forget about this. I mean, it's now, as you said, 20 years later, and yes, people are still getting sick. I got sick at 14 years, but there will still be generations. There were kids who went to Stuyvesant High School and other schools in the area who aren't connecting. As a matter of fact, there is somebody that I worked with who went to Stuyvesant who got sick, and this girl is in her 20s. She's in her 20s. She has a whole lifetime ahead of her that she now is dealing with. So, you know, that but by giving back, it's really helped me on an emotional level to be able to do it. Physically, I am disabled, and but I can give back in so many other ways, which is what I do.
Thank you so much, Marty. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley.
Yes.